Nigeria has been grappling with a rising debt profile over the years. According to the Debt Management Office, the country's debt profile stood at 46.25 trillion naira as of December 2022. However, the government has been struggling to meet its debt obligations and also fund development programs amidst declining revenue and economic challenges. One of the means which it has identified is its recent plans to remove completely fuel subsidy, which it claims has been a major drain on the country's finances. However, the organized labor and other stakeholders share a different perspective, especially there are concerns about the potential impact of such a move on the economy and the masses, given the purported follower of previous initiatives like the Subsidy, Reinvestment and Empowerment Program, SURE-P, introduced by the Goodluck Jonathan administration in 2012. Moreover, the incoming administration, after the May 29, 2023 transition of power and handover, will inherit, among other things, a huge debt burden from the outgoing administration. So tonight on Daily Politics, we ask, will the removal of fuel subsidy be the solution to Nigeria's debt burden, or will it lead to further economic challenges? Can the incoming administration successfully tackle the country's debt burden and other challenges which it will inherit from the current administration? Is it possible for the government and relevant stakeholders to find sustainable solutions to Nigeria's many challenges amidst declining revenue and other constraints? Hello viewers and welcome to Daily Politics. I am Hamza Idris. Joining me this evening to share their perspective on the issue, I have Jamilu Mohammed here in the studio. He's an author and an economic analyst. We're also joined virtually by Umar Yakubu. He's the Executive Director, Center for Transparency and Integrity Watch. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
All right, we'll take a short break. When we return, the conversation commences. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics. Mr. Jamilu, I remember in 2007, before the exit of President Olusegun Obasanjo, significant part of our debts were written off, right? What happened between 2007 and now that the profile has risen to 46.25 trillion naira?
Well, we have to look at the definition of debt to a nation and in economics. You cannot avoid debt. Debt in itself is not a cause.
So we cannot avoid it?
We cannot avoid it. You see, there are two perspectives to look at debt. One perspective is the definition itself, whether debt is an instrument, a facility, an economic instrument, or an economic product. In our own realm today, what we have is debt is mostly an economic product. In interest-free economies, you have debt as an instrument. So unless and until you are able to distinguish between the two and know the philosophy upon which you place your own debt accumulation, then possibly that's where you will be going wrong. But if you can define what debt is to your economy, I think it is a good thing.
Can we say it's borrowing in Nigerian context so that a local person who is watching us will understand?
Yes,
that
we
go
understand.
To a bank and borrow, or as contractors to build, we didn't pay them, or we go to multilateral corporations and then we borrow money.
We borrow, exactly. Okay. The other side of it is debt is actually the distribution of resources. In economics, for a very sound economy, you must have an equitable distribution of resources.
Okay.
And where you have more production on one side and the other side of the economy has less production, it means the economy that is producing more would have to redistribute its own resources to the
other.
To
Instead
the
of
other.
two sides to come together and benefit each other.
You have to redistribute. Of course, benefiting each other means redistributing your resources so that there should be equitable ownership of resources for production. Otherwise, one side having more production capacity would outweigh the other one, and then the economy would collapse. Of course, an example is when you have production and consumption. If you have more production, no consumption, the economy will not perform. The same thing if you have more consumption, less production, it will not. So one side of the economy must redistribute its own resources to the other. So debt or borrowing is part of this redistribution of resources, because you are moving resources from one plane to the other. So it is an economic necessity. There is no way you won't borrow. So
okay, but why you say there is no way people should not borrow? But we went cap in hand during Obasanjo's administration, pleading to countries, multinationals, to reduce the burden on Nigeria so that we should be able to oil our economy and provide essential services to the people. And at the end of the day, the pleadings, yielded results. So is it that Yar'Adua coming to Jonathan, coming to Buhari, that they didn't take note of the calamities that Nigeria passed through during Obasanjo's era or pre-Obasanjo, because he also inherited some of this debt from the military?
Well, they did. As I said, you cannot define your economy without debt. You see, what happened during Obasanjo regime or Obasanjo's administration is that you have a situation where you have a threshold where whatever happens, if you reach that threshold, you must reset. Yes, we were on the verge of
certain level of the debt.
Yes.
Like when you reach there, you cannot borrow anymore.
You cannot borrow anymore, and your creditors too will not be happy with you not borrowing, because, as I said, debt itself is an economic product. There are these multilateral institutions, we call them multilateral institutions. I actually don't want to call them multilateral credit institutions. They are actually corporate bodies making their profits, issuing economic products of debt, and then making profit out of it. So even if you backflap, they will still come back to you.
Wow!
It's not you going.
They will still come and say, we want to give you.
They will still come.
But later, if you are overburdened, you now start begging them to reduce the burden.
Possibly. No, you don't even have to beg. You see, I think that is very political, to say you have to go there begging. I think it's very political. There is that threshold you reach that you don't even have to beg. The system would reset itself.
Wow. Okay, let me hear from Umar Yakubu. If you can hear me, what is your take on Nigeria's debt profile? 46.25 trillion as of 2022, December. Oh, it's like we lost Umar Yakubu. I hope we get him. So maybe you answer this one now. So it's not really, don't you think it's a problem, this huge profile?
It is not. It is not a problem. I don't see it as a problem. 46.25 trillion. Now, put it against what you had 2021, 39.5 trillion.
2021.
Yes, 2021. Okay, that means the increase you have now is about 6.75%.
Yeah.
Sorry, 6.75 trillion.
Okay.
Naira. That's what you have. Now it is amounting to about 17%.
Okay.
Increase. Okay, now
Between
2021 and 2022.
Yes.
You have 6.75 trillion naira amounting to about 17%. Okay, now look at the debt to GDP ratio.
Okay.
The debt to GDP ratio between 2021 and 2022, you have 22.47%.
Okay.
Against 23.5%. Sorry, 23.2%.
Okay.
That's the
difference.
The 2021 is 22.43%. Then 2022 is 23.2%.
Okay.
The difference there is 0.73%.
So it's insignificant.
It's insignificant. If you look at what it means here is that your GDP growth, look at what you have borrowed on top.
Has it impacted?
6.75%, 6.75 trillion naira, which is 17%.
Okay.
If you borrowed 17% extra, and then you have only an increase of 0.73%, less than 1%. What it means here is about 15 to 16% of what you borrowed actually helped the economy.
It helped the economy?
Yes, it
okay.
did.
I think we have Omar Yakubu now. Let me have your take. Can Nigeria move on with this huge debt profile of 46.25 trillion? Most of we are in a transition period.
Okay, can you hear me now clearly?
Yeah,
hello.
Omar, we can hear you. Go on.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. And I heard what my elder brother there, his submissions about Nigeria's debt profile, and saying that everything is okay. When we're following the Bretton Woods rules with the World Bank, the IMF, and the WTO, where they bring all these criteria that may not be suitable for countries like Nigeria or developing economies like Nigeria. I heard his argument about the debt to GDP ratio. That's the threshold the IMF likes to give, where sometimes they say once it's no more than 30% or 40% or whatever criteria they set. Because some countries in Europe actually have up to 100% debt to GDP ratio, and they're doing fine. But neoclassical economics has shifted in a way to sense that you could actually, why not use debt to revenue? Debt to revenue. Now, how much debt have you collected and how much are you generating? Because GDP calculation, there are different methods of doing it that may not actually reflect or how you are supposed to pay that debt. So that is why we're in this quagmire. And for me, our debt is too high because if you, from the last data from NBS, from the central bank actually, we're using almost 100% of what we generate to pay back debt. And part of that debt is mainly accumulated on interest. So I don't totally agree with my elder brother there that our debt to GDP is sustainable because they're using that method, because we have to look at what our that is the major issue. We can't continue calculating it based on debt. Another thing I would like us to discuss is where were we when Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala cleared our debt way back in 2005, 2006, vis-a-vis to the debt to GDP and vis-a-vis debt to revenue. So we have to look at those things. And when we have borrowed so much from 2006 to date, what have we used that debt for? Is it for consumption or for capital? Things that I think I would like to highlight. Thank you.
And that is the question I wanted to ask you, that is it worth it, this huge sum? The state governors and then the federal government, have they utilized the money to impact the lives of the people, going by the unemployment figures, job losses, and all that? Are they in deficit in infrastructure?
Thank you very much. You see, when you borrow money, ideally for a developing economy like Nigeria, you borrow for capital expenditure so that you set the country or the state on a path of development, economic development, infrastructure, agriculture, roads, network, all those things. But you and I can clearly see the data says otherwise. If you look at how much we have borrowed vis-a-vis what is on ground, we have not done well. Secondly, we borrow a lot in fact, last year we were borrowing to service debt. I've never heard of that. We're borrowing not even just spend on capital, not to spend on recurrent, which is salaries and government expenses. Now we're even borrowing to service debt, service interest on the debt we borrowed. So we have to really redefine how these things. I remember another thing that we've abused thoroughly as a country is we have the Fiscal Responsibility Act that sets limits on how much the federal government should borrow. And I think it shouldn't exceed, there are different criteria, but I think it's basically about 3% of your revenue. You shouldn't exceed that. I think, and the last time we checked that, gone about 20%. So we've even violated our own laws, especially in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So if you do an analysis of what we have borrowed compared to what should be on ground, I don't think we have done well. Thank you.
Very sad. You have anything to add? We're talking about borrowing, and on the other side, the output from what has been borrowed.
Sometimes the problem is when we look at the lump figure, that is where we have problems. But by the time we dissect the figure actually, 46.25 trillion.
For 36 states and the federal government
if we look at the portfolio and the categorization, first of all, let's look at the categorization. Our external debt is 40% of this figure. 60% is local.
Okay.
So I think when you borrow locally, you are still developing the economy.
But there are allegations that these politicians, many of them, just corner the money.
There's always this corruption index. If we are going to look at the corruption index, you see, in all our calculations, we hardly put in this corruption index.
Yes, so you can see we have the domestic debt profile from 2012 to 2022 in billions.
Good.
Now, trillions.
Now, the other indices we are not looking at is the portfolio of our debts. We have multilateral debts. We have bilateral debts. Then we have commercial debts.
Okay.
Then we have small things like promissory notes.
Yeah.
Okay, now, our multilateral debts, which are the stubborn debts, are about 48% of this total.
Okay.
The 52% belongs to the rest. And in the rest, our bilateral debts is about 12%. Bilateral debts are mostly easy to handle. Bilateral debts, we have China, India, Japan, France, and Germany. I think these are the 5 bilateral creditors. Okay, 12%. But commercial debt, we have about 37%, which is things like our Eurobond, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you put together your commercial debts and then the bilateral debts, right?
Yeah.
They are much easier to handle than the multilateral debts. Our problem has always been these multilateral debts: IMF, World Bank, International Development Finance, and so on and so forth. So what you now have to do is, you now have to try to balance, cut. What is the amount of debt you will cut from the multilateral debts, and then possibly rechannel them back to
the economy.
The bilateral, and then the commercial debts. Instead of borrowing from multilateral now, go back borrowing within the bilateral and then the commercial realm. So I think that will make more sense, and that will give you the flexibility of running your economy. The most stubborn debts are the multilateral debts. So if you cut them off, or if you cut a chunk of them and then rechannel your effort back to your possibly commercial debts. Now, CBN has told us that we have our Eurobond. I think there are about 13 regimes. I think 13 regimes is quite a good number, and if we can even add. And recently, Dangote himself, I think, has issued about 300 billion naira
for the refineries
Eurobond. So I think this is how to look at it. If you are looking at the
from the negative
figure,
perspective,
if you are looking at the lump figure, it is scary.
Yeah, so you have to reduce it.
But if you dissect That is where you play around. Take from A, give it back to B, instead of going to the stubborn aspect of the or the stubborn creditors, so to say, IMF, World Bank, International Development Finance, rechannel all your efforts back to.
So what you are saying is our
bilateral.
debt profile vis-a-vis our GDP, if you look at it, we're not doing bad.
You see, we are not doing bad. He is talking about.
Even though he said there are many parameters in
yes, the
assessing
parameters
the GDP.
now they say you should hinge on is debt to revenue. You see, GDP, I am not the GDP type actually.
Okay.
Yes,
you don't really dissipate your energy.
I don't spend my energy looking at the GDP, but it is a parameter. You see, even US has been using the national this thing. What do you call it? Up till 1992 or so.
Okay.
That was when they adopted the GDP.
Okay, they were using a different method.
Initially, they refused to
bother themselves.
they bother themselves with the GDP.
All right.
So I think the GDP is not actually a very good index to look at this, but it is the conventional point.
Okay. All right, Yakubu, you know this figure 46.25 excludes the waste and means of, is it 22 point something? Yeah, at the CBN. So what will happen to the next government? How are they going to actually manage these multiple issues? Because the waste and means is still at the National Assembly, right, for ratification or whatever.
Well, the only way you can pay your debt is you either increase taxes or you generate enough production that you make revenue to pay that debt. Now, these are the primary two ways that you can do it. Now, if the new government comes in and increases taxes, you can imagine there will be revolt. And even if there is no revolt, it has its own effects on businesses. When it was raised from 5% to 7.5%, if you continue taxing, there's a limit to where you can tax people that they will become productive. If you overtax them, they will get to a level where it's not productive anymore and things get too expensive. And that has an effect also on your inflation rate and other rates. Now, if you want to increase your revenue, now, since to increase your revenue, you need to improve your power, you need to improve your security, you need to improve your human capacity to do that. But now there's no time for all that. These are medium and long-term issues. We have already blown a lot of money in these sectors, and we have not seen much. What the government could do is to reduce waste.
Okay,
Waste
to reduce
in two
waste.
or three areas. One, the waste they should reduce is on our recurrent expenditure. We're spending too much on recurrent. They should implement the Orange report where they would downsize those agencies by 20%. Once you downsize those, then you block a lot of revenue leakages. Secondly, I think what they could do, if they decentralize the economy, I think the state will be more serious in revenue generation instead of the current sharing formula where everybody goes to Abuja and we just share. So we will make the states more responsible. I think about 2 weeks ago, some powers were ceded to the states where they can generate their power, their rail systems, and all those things. Now, the moment you do more of that, the states have capacity. In fact, every local government has an export potential. Every local government in Nigeria, 774, there's something they can produce and export. But the only way you can get them to do that is that you have to incentivize the states by giving them more powers and less power to the federal government. So I think if we do that, so revenue can now show up because the tax will not work for a developing economy like us. Now you can't overtax us. There are other factors you have to look at. So these are the two things I think the next government can do to drastically reduce waste. And of course, I know you get one of the ways they want to do is to remove the fuel subsidy because they're seen as a waste. But before they remove the subsidy, they should look at the recurrent expenditure waste and reduce that first before they go on to other things.
All right. You see, when you mentioned too, the next question I wanted to ask you is why you didn't mention fuel subsidy removal. Is it a booby trap for the next government that this administration is trying to do it at the twilight of its administration of 8 years? Is it a booby trap that they want to remove it before handing over?
You see, if you look at this thing from a purely neoclassical economic perspective, it will make sense to remove the fuel subsidy. But my fear is now, look, yes, we have a revenue problem in Nigeria, but all the revenues we have been generating, what have we done with it? How effectively have we utilized the revenue we have generated? You remove fuel subsidy today, you have an extra 2 trillion, 3 trillion, whatever, 4 trillion. Now, what next? When in the last 5-6 years, FRS has moved from, let's say, 200 billion, 300 billion generation of revenue to over 1 trillion per year. Customs has exceeded that. Post authority to have been doing well. So they are generating. Now you remove the subsidy, you are still going to generate more. Now, how effectively are you going to utilize those funds? That's just my concern. Like I said, looking at it from a purely economic point of view, it may make sense to remove the subsidy. But the resistance is coming because the citizens are not seeing what the monies or their taxes have been done before. So that is why there's resistance. If people were, that is why there is little, you can't convince anybody that government is going to offer palliatives when they remove subsidy. The last 3 or 4 increases, they said they'll provide buses, they'll do A, they'll do B, they'll do C. None has been done, not even one. At most, they'll buy buses after 2-3 weeks or two months, you don't see them again. So this is the confidence that Nigerians need to have in government that when they remove this, let them know it's for their own good. It's not just because they cannot control the corruption. They have refused to control the corruption in the fuel subsidy issue. They have refused to control the corruption in that this fuel goes out of our borders. This is not taking out flies. They are taking out petrol in tankers. They can't control it. So the only way to do it is to abolish it. Fine, that is good. How effectively do they plan to utilize the resources they intend to save from the customs they made from FRS and now from fuel subsidy removal? That's just a question.
Okay. Yeah, you have heard what Umar said. Are you on the same page with him? Yes, removing it might not necessarily affect the economy. But what about poor people like you and me? Cost of transportation, they said a liter of fuel will most likely spike to 750.
And the fuel subsidy will go on forever if we are considering that. If we are considering
the impact,
popular confidence on government. Because the issue is the population has no confidence on government that if the subsidy is removed, that part of the subsidy, what would it be used for? People don't know, and it may not reach the poor man. And even now, you see, I don't still believe up to this moment that 40% of the subsidy reaches the poor man. I don't think. I think the solution, if actually you want the subsidy to stay, first define what subsidy means. Are we talking about a national welfare or an economic program? If we are talking about economic program, as he has said that if you want to consider economics, remove the subsidy.
Yes.
But there's a question mark on what happens to the population. Now, considering
and government
that,
exists actually for the welfare of the people.
And considering that, agreed, what you do now is, for me, instead of just allowing it to continue forever, and the complaints will continue, and I mean, the figures will continue rising, why not take the subsidy, give it right into the hands of the poor man, instead of subsidizing the consumption from source. Give it.
But how can that be done? Is it like these peanuts that welfare package for the poor?
Create a fuel subsidy coupon. You can create it. Now, the coupon would be that you calculate how many people are benefiting from the subsidy, right? Now, thank God we have our NIN. So the government knows every Nigerian. And if you have a bank account, the government knows your bank account. They will put your money inside your bank account. Create a coupon, then now profile Nigerians that will benefit from the fuel subsidy. Each Nigerian monthly, there's an amount you consume, assumably. This is the amount you consume per month on subsidy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. that should be a coupon that should be handed to you. If you want, these coupons should only be redeemable at fuel stations. So take your coupon if you want, sell it
but not everyone has car or motorcycle.
Yes, if you don't have it, sell it to the person that is riding a car. Of course, if you want to ride a car, if you want to transport yourself, you have a 1,000 naira coupon. Give the pay 800. The driver collects 1,000 naira coupon. You pay 800. He goes to redeem it at the
But you know,
station.
most people take public transport to go to work.
Well, we are still saying the same thing. You don't even have to pay the driver. Sell it.
Okay, they can sell the coupon.
You can sell the coupon.
Okay, Umar, can you come in here? Because it's a bit problematic, this issue of a subsidy. Should there even be subsidy in the first place, assuming we got it right in Nigeria? Because I think subsidy is a product of failure somewhere.
No, in the right sense, there was nothing wrong with subsidy. Subsidy is okay. Government intervenes at every level. American economy is probably 40 times bigger than Nigeria. They intervene in the agricultural sector. They give agricultural subsidies in the US. So many Western countries that are much richer than us give those subsidies. So it's not a bad thing in that sense, if you look at it. But for Nigeria, it has become a problem in the sense that it has created more problems than solutions. Now, I think in 2007 or so, when President Erdogan came on board, they sold the 2 refineries to Dangote, they reversed it. Now, if you had liberalized the sector, by now we may have had more refineries, better fuel supply, probably more jobs. So there are benefits of subsidy removal, a lot of benefits. Considering also now, when I remember during Jonathan, we thought the amount was exorbitant. It was about 1.7 trillion during Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, if I'm correct. Now they are talking about 2.something trillion. So you can see the corruption has doubled there. And you and I, none of us has bought more cars in the last 3 or 4 years. But you can see the subsidy keeps on increasing. So it's a good thing to do, but honestly, we cannot. The past government, I mean the present government, has not shown the capacity to manage it properly. Usually it's common everywhere in the world. Government is very bad at managing business, and this is a business that should be allowed for the private sector. So yes, it should be removed, but with a caveat. The caveat is that there should be a process, slow withdrawal removal, which we have been doing the slow one. It has not worked too. It does not work. Government has not had the courage to totally remove it. So let them remove it, but let there be a mechanism, like my elder brother has said now. It's an idea to have a fuel subsidy coupon. It could be a good idea, but that may come with some legal issues. Because when you cut off the subsidy, it goes into the federation account. And if it goes into the federation account, you have to redistribute these funds to local governments, state governments, and the federal government. But however they want to do it, the larger issue is to ensure that all funds are adequately utilized for the poor man and benefit of the poor and the welfare of all citizens. That is more important than what we currently have now.
All right, thank you, Umar. Thank you, Jamilu. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, the conversation continues. Viewers, don't go away. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and follow us live on YouTube. Jamilu, you heard what Umar said, talking about, in line with what you said, but Nigerians is like they are yet to recover from the trauma of Shopee of 2012, when there's a partial removal of subsidy. They brought they invested the money in bringing buses. I know that when you go to Kubo bypass, you see hundreds of those buses parked there. In fact, people are now trying to recover from that partial removal. So how can government convince Nigerians that it means business this time around?
It depends on the might of the authority of the administration. At least if URP did not work very well, I'm sure we all remember that PTF did well. And you still have PTF structures till today in our societies. So what it means now is the might of the government that is coming.
Is it an offshoot of subsidy removal? Even though I know I was young that time, I think Abacha added some kobos, right?
No,
on oil.
Subsidy.
And
what he did was he said, okay, I'll remove part of the subsidy, but because you don't trust government, the subsidy you have removed will channel it to something developmental.
So they now created PTF, headed by Buhari. But why is it that Buhari couldn't get it right this time around? Why is he finding it difficult? When he was actually manning a subset of government, he did so well, as you said. Up till now, when you go to some hospitals, you see even beddings, new.
Yes.
Because they pack them in those hospitals, drugs, books, and all that.
You see, I think the might of Baba Buhari lies in the people he assembles. At that time, he had a very excellent team.
Like the Salehijos you are talking about in the PTF,
exactly. They did very well. Unfortunately for Baba Buhari this time around, I think his team has not actually lived up to much expectation.
And he trusts too much.
He trusts too much. He believes that once he gives you a job to do, go and do it. He will not
ask questions. He believes that you will deliver.
But I think that is the weakness of a leader. A leader should ask questions. You see, I remember
should supervise also.
Umar radiallahu anhu said, for him to leave a despot in power for 1 hour, he is ready to change a governor every single day.
Every single day to change just to get it right.
Yes, just to get it right. So I think this is where Baba Buhari got it wrong. You see, Baba Buhari believes he is clean and he believes everybody should be clean. And he believes that Nigerians should be asking questions. Okay, Nigerians should ask questions.
And there is limit to how they can ask the questions.
Yes, unfortunately, civil society organizations are not so much doing well in this aspect.
Maybe they have been compromised.
I don't know, but I think they have not lived up to expectation. They are the ones who are supposed to have been prodding, pricking these people. What is happening in fact, if you push forward, Baba Buhari would have to yield in certain aspects. Something is going wrong in power. Something is going wrong in water resources. Something is A, B, C, D. Now, what is happening there? If you push, Baba Buhari would listen. Unfortunately, the voices have been very low. So I think the government that is coming would have to gather a lot of might of authority in order to say it will implement this.
To get it right.
One thing for sure, governments normally, political governments like this, when they come, they want to pacify their political actors. This is where the problem is.
So instead of
being bureaucratic, being technocratic, if you like, why not be bureaucratic, technocratic in the first 3 years or 2.5 years? Your last 1.5 years.
You do compensation.
Do compensation, do a lot of your politics. By that time, you must have robusted the economy.
Wow. Umar, what is your take on this? Because President Buhari, before he came on board, he was among those that were saying there is nothing like subsidy. Who is subsidizing who? And now here he is, after 8 years, he now acknowledged that indeed there is subsidy. So how do you want, or how will you advise the incoming government on the way forward, how to tackle this monster without injuring the feelings of the poor man in the village?
This is a difficult question. Based on what President Buhari has done, apart from his inability to address problems, let us remember that he's actually the standing minister for petroleum. Apart from being the president of Federal Republic of Nigeria, he's the he's the minister for petroleum right now as we speak, and he has been since 2015. And in those years, he has not managed to fix any refinery. And as none has been fixed, billions are being spent. Our organization will have that data. It's even open source anyways, open source information. Billions are still being spent on the refineries. We started this conversation talking about debt. Last year, January, if I'm correct, 2021 or late 2022 after COVID, this same government went to borrow $1 billion US. I don't know whether the money has been released or they have gotten the money, but $1 billion US to fix these same 3 refineries we are talking about. And up to now, they have not been fixed. Maybe they must publish. So that's why I say, what do you borrow money for? $1 billion is no joke. Nigerians are going to pay for that money. So my careful advice to the next government, because I don't think I have the confidence that they can combat the corruption and the inefficiencies with that petroleum sector as well, is to, one, fully implement the PIA Act. It's now a law. It has been a law for over a year. Now, if they are fully implementing the PIA Act, it means NNPC needs to operate as a wholly commercial company, no government intervention. The people, the GMD there and all those people are not supposed to be there, but they're still appointees of government. They're not supposed to be there. If it's a commercial entity, it should fully become commercial and let them compete like any other commercial entity. Look, thank God, Dangote Refinery is coming on board very soon. We hope so. So once they do that, maybe give some time. See when Dangote Refinery may come on, even though experts will tell you the price might not really be dropped because the only thing you are removing is the transportation cost. He has to sell it at the international prices. But whatever it is, my take is if there could be a discussion, let's say with the Dangote, because his capacity, the capacity of the refinery, should be sufficient for Nigeria. I think almost 100%. Maybe enter into some agreement. Let's say for the first 3 years, please sell it at so price. Sell the petrol at so price so that the pressure will not be too much. It could be concession. Maybe their payments is paying some money on the oil block. They could take the fee from there. Or maybe assuming he paid $1 billion for the oil block, they could waive what he has not paid for. Those kind of things, so that the poor man, the average man, does not suffer. Now, while you are doing that, you now fully liberalize the sector slowly. But if you just come in May and June, you just remove the fuel subsidy 100%, it's going to cause distortions in the market. It's going to drive inflation. Then the last multinational poverty index says we have 130 million Nigerians in that bracket. Is going to increase to probably 140 or 150. Once you have that, crime increases. There are social consequences that happen because poverty gets too high. Crime will increase, drug crimes, human trafficking, and so many other things. So let them take their time, 2 years maybe. But you need to sit down with other stakeholders, like let's say Dangote, to discuss on all these issues so that there will be a slow removal and we just do this thing and fully implement the Petroleum Industry Act. That's my take. Thank you.
You heard him. That they should rush into this. They should put the infrastructure, get the relevant stakeholders to be on the same page so that the poor will not.
The infrastructure will not be a problem. Right now it is not the problem. You see, this slow removal of fuel subsidy, we've forgotten that we have labor unions. I don't know how to interface with these labor unions. Every time you remove fuel subsidy, even if it is 10 naira, 5 naira, they go to the streets.
Because they suffer the brunt. They are speaking the mind of the poor.
So, what I'm trying to say is, if you say you will remove it gradually, remove a certain percentage today, they will go to the streets. Next time you remove, they will still go to the streets. So I think this is counterproductive.
So you think Tinubu should just remove it?
If you are removing fuel subsidy, put all your structures on ground and just remove it.
But the infrastructure, like labor, we personally spoke to them yesterday. The story is what we led our paper with. They said they are not even on the same page with the government. They didn't call them.
That's what I'm saying.
With them.
That's now what I'm saying. You see, the issue of I don't want to speak for the government or for labor in this aspect. This is the same thing I'm saying, that whenever you want to remove fuel subsidy, you won't go together with the labor. Labor would always protest.
Yeah, because labor is protesting because it's like government is trying to put something on nothing. For instance, You had Umar. He said from the time this administration came, assuming they do the right thing, they will have built many refineries. They now went and borrowed $1 billion
for the refineries
to fix, is it Port Harcourt refinery and Kaduna refinery? Here we are. They are still not. They are still in the pipeline.
The corruption index is still there. That's the problem.
Then can't somebody pay for that?
You see, I think
can't we address the issue of the corruption and all that so that one person will not lead to the suffering of millions of people?
That is what is supposed to be.
We're talking about a lot of money here.
We have cartels. We have syndicates. Any government that comes would have to first of all fight these cartels and syndicates. You know that fuel subsidy syndicate.
Is it that we have lost opportunity now because Buhari was seen as the messiah?
We have actually, and I don't trust that the incoming administration would be able to do better than what Buhari has done on fuel subsidy.
Wow, Umar, I want to have your take here. Jamilu said he has his doubts whether Tinubu and co will do things differently, especially in fixing the economy.
Well, going by antecedents of him being governor of Lagos State, I'm hopeful that I think he will do much better than what we have done in terms of the economy. That's my own take. That because I'm comparing what he has done before, I cannot judge him on what he's going to do. So based on what he has done before, I feel he'll do much better. He has already stated that he's going to remove fuel subsidy. I think I saw a clip somewhere online on social media. He said he's going to remove it. But my advice is, maybe my elder brother didn't get me correctly. I'm not saying it should not be removed. And I'm not calling for facial removal in faces, no. I agree on a date to remove it, but in between, some certain things have to be done. There is a process that must be done. And in this process, not only Labour, I think Dangote and other people that have refineries should be brought on board for the planning to see that when are their refineries going to come on stream. And before that, there should be concessions because I'm sure they are owing government a lot of money. So there should be some concessions in some areas, some taxes, some whatever waivers you want to do. You do that just to buy time to ensure that the structure is fully in place for the supply so that when you remove the subsidy fully, it's seamless. You don't remove subsidy. We shouldn't just fix our eye on subsidy. It comes with its own consequences. Like I said, you remove the subsidy today, you automatically go to more millions of Nigerians into the poverty bracket.
Okay, hello.
Now, when that happens,
what Jamilu was saying, I think it's actually voicing out the thinking of many Nigerians that, of course, Tinubu has done well in Lagos. Age was on his side that time, just like Age was on the side of Buhari when he came as military ruler. And Tinubu is now coming with this baggage of age. Of course, we are all going to get old. Maybe this will weigh him down to deliver as expected.
Okay, yeah, like I said, yes, and it's very evident that the baggage of age during the campaigns, it showed a lot of weakness somewhere. But his handlers have argued that what he needs to help Nigeria is his brain and not his body. Yeah, so wait and see how active his brain is. It will be in taking the right decisions for the economy. And I think we're hopeful so far from the little he has done, how he ran through this party. I'm not speaking for anybody here, but how he ran his campaign and everything. It shows that I think we might get better from where we currently are.
All right, thank you. Finally from you, because we have run out of time. Okay. What will you tell? Because we already have Tinubu now. He's going to be sworn in. So what do you think he should do in categorical terms to get it right?
Yes, let me correct an impression.
Okay.
First, I believe economically he will do well.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, as far as fuel subsidy is concerned, I don't think he will do any better. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Now, what I think he should do is let him convene all the stakeholders, labor, the government, and then private sector. Come together, sit down, and then look at this thing holistically. The problem with labor is if you call labor now, they will send activists. Tell labor to send their economists.
Okay, who will understand?
Who would understand this, not activists.
All right.
See, I think if there is this stakeholder synergy, I think we'll get it right.
All right, thank you very much, Jamilu Mohammed, an author and an analyst, both economic and political. And thank you very much for coming to the program.
Thank you very
much. Umar Yakubu, thank you very much for joining us. We're happy to have you in the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, viewers, that's a wrap on today's edition. Do join us for another interesting package. Bye-bye for now. I'm Hamza Idris.